As the Iron Curtain fell, over a dozen nations were freed from the heavy-handed grasp of the once powerful USSR. From its foundation in 1922 to final demise in 1991, the Soviet Union and its allies made up of an incredibly significant portion of the Europe, essentially filling out the entire eastern side of the continent. A global superpower at its peak, the USSR somehow only lasted a short 70 years. How is this possible, and why exactly did the Soviet Union collapse? We will find out the reason here. If you ask Mikhail Gorbachev, the last president of Soviet Union, why his nation failed and collection of his alliance crumbled before him, he would have one likely answer: Chernobyl. The former president made it clear 20 years after Chernobyl in 2006. He believes that this was the final turning point into a steep decline of USSR. Whether this was the final straw or not, the Soviet people, it is no doubt the Chernobyl tragedy was severely disastrous to Soviet Union. When the explosion occurred on 26 April 1986, the Soviet leadership immediately hoped to hide the startling problem from the people. It was evident from the start to the first responders and government officials that this explosion posed an enormous threat to the surrounding citizens, and the radioactive fallout it caused was roughly 400 times that of Hiroshima atomic bomb. Still, the Communist Party was desperate to cover it all up, even if that meant risking the lives of their own people. They gave no warning, and so May Day parades and other events continued to be held. Everyone went about their lives as normal, and no word was given until the sudden influx of radiation. It was then, on May 14th, that the President Gorbachev made his first public statement on the matter, during which he was very willing to downplay the reality of failure and instead focuses on bashing the West for what he called malicious lies and an over-exaggerated report of what had happened. It was not long before the truth came out, though. The Soviet people became furiously aware of the corruption that they were under, and particularly the failure of Glasnost. Glasnost was a policy enacted by Mikhail Gorbachev that was supposed to restore the certain freedoms of the Soviet people, such as freedom of speech, press, religion. It was intended to create a better way of life and more transparency from the government, and in some ways it did work. But the newfound freedoms allowed the Soviet people to discover the government cover-up efforts of Chernobyl and expose their leadership's deep corruption, which led to a drastic decrease in public trust. This was not the only policy that would contribute to the Union's collapse, though. Another well-intended change was known as perestroika. The goal was to adopt a new economic system similar to the modern-day China. The mixed communist-capitalist structure would allow for more market freedom, and the policy also opened the door for new democratic elections. The Communist Party would still remain in control even with these elections, but freedom of choice was nevertheless believed to be a significant benefit for the Soviet people. Ironically, though, this policy began to contribute to the crumbling of the Union as citizens started to see the shifts as weaknesses. The reason why perestroika was enacted may have also been a relevant factor as the Soviet collapse. Though it had previously been remarkably successful, the Soviet economy was now falling apart. There was a brief stint of recovery around 1970, but that was short-lived as Afghanistan war became a new source of spending for the Soviet government. This greatly restrained the recovery path, and citizens of the Union began to grow tired of living under communist regime, with poverty plaguing the people and communism seeming to be cause. There was a severe need for change, which is what they would lead to Mikhail Gorbachev's later reforms. But as we know, this produced yet one more failed attempt to save the shaky foundations that the government was trying to stand on. The nail that sealed the coffin for the end of Soviet Union was the events of 1989. After living under a Soviet shadow, the Warsaw Pact satellite states of the Union, including Poland, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia, began to face their own challenges and the downfall of Soviet-friendly regimes. Other nearby communist allies such as Romania also faced revolts that would sever their ties with Communist Union. and the Berlin Wall over in Germany would once and for all be torn down. Ethnic conflict, anti-communist sentiments and overall disapproval was building even from within the USSR itself, and instead of putting an end to it, the government yet again failed. The reason why there was even an opportunity for the opposition that rippled throughout the East 1989 was due to a poor strategy utilized by the President Gorbachev in his bid to resurrect the Soviet economy. After spending years as a frequent critic and enemy of the US, Gorbachev decided the best way to create his successful economic reforms would be to build a better relationship with the West. Even though United States particularly was still far from a potential friend or Soviet. Hoping to calm this tension as the first step towards friendship with the West, Gorbachev promised that the Soviet Union would withdraw from the nuclear arms race. Gorbachev decided to subsequently pull out of the Afghanistan war, reduce Soviet military presence throughout their satellite states. Then sudden deterioration of an overbearing military throughout the Warsaw-Pact nations and what appeared to be a weakening of international Soviet influence is what triggered the following events of 1989. Still, it was not the withdrawal of military troops that hurt the USSR. It was also mere state of their military at that time. The Stalin-era policy that prioritized the production of military equipment over consumer goods and basic necessities for the Soviet people was no more, and with the economy tank, Gorbachev's military was crumbling too. The consequence of his perestroika drastically reduced military spending and in turn the military might of the Union. There were also external factors, including an arms reduction treaty that the Soviets had tried to push up. 732. The flag of the Russian Federation rose in place of the Soviet flag atop the Kremlin. The new president Boris Yeltsin would take the helm, now the leader of one nation with 15 new neighbors who had once joined together. We are now living in a new world, rang the word of the last president of the Soviet Union. The answer to why Soviet Union collapsed may differ depending on whom you ask. Gorbachev believed it was result of Chernobyl, while others point to his own policies, perestroika, glasnost. Still others blame the broken economy or the decaying military. The reality is likely a sum of each of these theories. As long as possible until 1988, this required the Union to cut the military numbers by 500,000, while roughly 15,000 of the troops over in Afghanistan had been killed. Pushback over the draft only worsened the problem, and once standing at over 5.3 million strong in 1985, the Soviet military was now reduced to a startling total below 2.7 million in 1991. With its people fighting back and an attempted coup, the Communist Party opposition, Gorbachev's Soviet Union was in its final hour. On December 25, 1991, President Mikhail Gorbachev announced to the world that the USSR was no more. This was the end of the Soviet Union altogether, as it could no longer withstand the weight of its stakes. Without the economic chaos, perestroika would not have been necessary, if not glasnost. The Chernobyl scandal may not have been so easy to uncover. Furthermore, without glasnost, drafted soldiers would not have been able to speak so openly about the despicable condition they were forced into, and the military may not have shrunk so much. It also may not have been so dangerously reduced if Gorbachev had not been extensively determined to begin appeasing the West, or maybe the Afghanistan war took too much of toll on the military and the economy also. More military spending and strength could have kept for the satellite states in line and prevented the Berlin Wall from falling. Every potential reason for the dissolution of the USSR is intertwined with yet another reason. When Gorbachev's theory of how his union fell apart is only a potential turning point, not the sole cause. Reality is that it took a series of mistakes and miscalculation to bring down the Soviet Union. While it may be easy to blame the last president of destroying his own nation, it is important to note that the majority of his own mistakes was simply attempt to correct the flaws of his predecessor. In all actuality, the reason why Soviet Union collapsed comes down to a long string of repeated failures on behalf of its leadership. Thank you for watching our video. We will bring a new topic in the next week. Till then, bye, take care.